So next topic, we can talk about, we'll talk about smart effects for a little bit. I'll actually just, oh wait, this is not the right computer. Okay, I'll patch in some beams and some spots, and we can talk about smart effects and how I really dealt with them yesterday on the Dying for Dementia thing. So with smart effects, you have two different types of smart effects. You have wave effects, and you have swing effects. The difference is a wave effect takes a parameter of the light, like a dimmer or color or pan or tilt or whatever, and it applies a waveform over that parameter. A swing effect is basically like a automated cue list. So you have steps inside that you can say, in this step, pan's going to be at -20, and this step, pan's going to be at +40, this step, whatever, and then it'll jump through. And you can change like fade curves for those and that kind of thing. So generally speaking, my general rule of thumb is if I'm doing a color chase type thing, I will use a swing effect. And if I'm doing pretty much anything else, I'll use a wave effect. So how you do that is you select the fixtures that you want. These are my R2 washes. And you go to the Smart Effects tab, and you click New Effect. You can see you have wave effect up here and swing effect, two different types. So you choose what type you want, and then you choose the parameter that you want to do it over. So if I'm doing like just a simple chase like intensity, wave effect, intensity, hit OK, and you'll see the fixtures start doing their thing. I'll zoom in on these fixtures so we can see them a little bit better. So they're just doing a nice little wave across the intensity. So here's how to adjust that effect. In this tab, not seeing everything. You have the intensity. There's more down there that I can't see. There we go. Okay, so this first tab right here is one of the parameters involved in this effect. Effects can have multiple parameters built into them. This one's just a single parameter effect, wave effect over intensity. You have 4 different waveforms. You have sine, square, sawtooth, and ramp. You can also customize this a little bit. You can choose, there are kind of some other waveforms that you can use. You don't really need those. They're not all that useful. Most everything you want to do, you can do with these 4 waveforms. So simple, like right now we have a sine going across these. You can do a square, which is going to, pop between them. You can do a sawtooth, which is going to like pop off and fade on, and then a ramp, which is basically a hard edge sine wave. So in this tab, you can also change size, which is basically your fixtures are already at a set point. Right now they're at 0, and this is over a size 100, so it's going to go from 0 to 100 and back. You can change that, go down. And this is going to be basically around whatever value they're already programmed at, the base point, which we'll get to in a second in the advanced tab. So right now at 50%, they're going to go from 0 to 50. If I set this to like, let's say 20%, come on Vista. And if we come over here to the features and set these guys to 50, they're going to be basically 20% on either side of 50. So they'll go from 30% to 70% and back down. The other thing you can change in here is your rate. you have two different rate tabs basically. This rate up here is the speed of the effect, and you can have a multiplier. So one of the nice things about this is I have 8 fixtures right here. If I'm trying to do this to a tempo, my tempo is 120 beats per minute. If I set this to 120, it's going to be super fast. I mean, if you want that, them going across every beat right there, you can do that. But if you divide this by the number of fixtures you have, I'll set that to square so you can see a little bit better. Now the fixtures are popping on every beat, which is nice. And you can divide that by 4 if you want them to be a little bit faster, or whatever. But that's kind of a nice way to divide by the number of fixtures you have, and you can set the tempo right there. The other thing you can do, if I think this works right, if you have it at ×1, you can do per cycle per fixture, and it's the same thing. Just depending on how you want to deal with it. And then the other setting you have in here is a direction. You have forward, backward, bounce. I'm going to set this a little bit faster. Forward, they'll go forward, backward, they'll go backward, and bounce, they'll bounce back and forth. And you have the Knight Rider thing. Set them to red, and there you go. So other stuff you have in here, in the sequence tab, there's a bunch of different settings in here that it can get really complicated. I'm going to set this back to forward really quick. So the overlap will basically determine the overlap between fixtures itself. So if I turn this down, you'll see them start to kind of coalesce together. And if you have all the way to 0, it's just going one at a time, basically. So it's kind of like, in this context, it'd be more like a width parameter, a width of the effect, if that makes sense. So you can have a really tiny width or overlap the whole thing. Stagger will determine how soon after a light turns on, the next light will turn on. So right now they're at 100%, but if you turn it down to 0, they'll all start going together. So if you do like 30%, it's kind of a, let me turn this down, like a pulse, if you will. And you could turn down the overlap and they'll kind of pulse like that, turn down the width basically. So that's kind of a cool effect if you wanted. And this is where the per cycle thing comes in handy, because you can do 120 beats per minute and it'll do a little like pulse every beat, essentially. Next you have order, which there are 4 different orders: ID, selection, random, and position. So you can see in my selection I have these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. That's the order that I selected them in. I just drug from here down, so it'll select from left to right, top to bottom. Pretty sure that's correct. So if you have it on selection, which it defaults to, it'll do that order. ID will take the actual ID of the fixture itself. So 49 through 50, you see these turn red. That's showing you what order it's applying to it. If you do position, it'll do position in the fixture chooser, which I'll adjust them around here in a second and show you what that does. And if you do random, it'll apply a random, which is super nice to have, because it's always nice to have flashy randomness going on. The only problem with random in Vista is, since this is random selection order, it applies a random selection order. You can see when I go back. But it doesn't like randomize it every cycle. So it's still going to be a pattern, which is unfortunate. And I can show you some tricky ways to get around that in a second as well. So selection, order. You can also change, this is the selection order ascending or descending. Right now it's going 1 through 8. If I hit descending, it'll go 8 through 1. Another way to flip it around. This stuff you can do, so it's called a fan curve, Right now it's set to linear, which means it's applying throughout the entire thing from one end to the next. If you do from ends, it'll start from the middle and kind of fan out. And you can do inverted, which is another way to flip it around, and then from center, which will be the opposite of from ends. Those are more handy when you have like millions of fixtures. This stuff down here, this is mainly for multi-element fixtures. You guys don't have any, unless you were to patch in your R2s, I think, in their like full channel mode. When they're full channel mode, you have access over the different zones of the fixture. Then this could come in handy. But it's also super advanced and probably more work than it's worth for events that you guys do. The blocking and repeat thing, though, is kind of interesting. You can do, I'll have to remember exactly how to do this. I'm pretty sure with blocking, so blocking you put in, let me just try this. No, blocking is, yeah, okay. So let's start with repeat first, because that's more easy to. So repeat is, it'll basically group fixtures together. So you can see this preview right now. It says A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, blah, blah. That's applying, fixture 1 is getting assigned letter A. So I'm pointing at the screen, but A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If I type in, just like in poetry, A, B, B, C, C. Let's see here. A, B, B, C, C. Is that going to work for me? It's not going to work for me. Why isn't it? I thought that would work. It is mad at me. Oh, I see. It's doing this to me. Okay. There's another part of the software that you can do that in. You can type in numbers here. Repeat. It will repeat your blocking. So right now, if I have this at 2, it'll start over every 2 fixtures. So A, B, A, B, A, B. You can do 3, A, B, C, A, B, C, B, C. And I think you can do 2 divided by something. So 2 divided by 3. So that's, yeah, it's really hard to explain, but 2 divided by 3 is doing A, C, A, B, C, A, C, A, B, C. And if you can figure out why that works that way, more power to you. A, D, A, B, C, D, A, D, A, B, C, D. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's taking, I don't know, whatever. Blocking, you can do the same thing, but this will group elements together. So you have A, B, B, C, C, and do the same thing over here. You can do 2, it'll be A, B, B, A, B, B. And so now you have, you know, these 2 fixtures are together, these 2 fixtures are together, and so on. A lot of that is, you know, more work than it's worth for you guys, especially with a limited amount of fixtures, because you get into 4 and all of a sudden you have just a little bloop, 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 bloop thing going. So generally that's something I don't mess with. And even at, you know, my main job, I don't mess with that because it's way more work than it needs to be. And the last tab, advanced. This thing is, so this little table right here shows you all the parameters inside the effect. Right now we just have intensity, and you can change offsets, and you can see the waveform changing. It's just changing the offset against the cycle. And then you have base point. So bound only uses program base point. This effect will basically has the base point, which right now we have it set to 0, I think, which is, or 50, the actual value of where the fixtures are, and it's going around that base point. You can do free, use any base point. which means if you have these fixtures on a fader on a console, you can adjust where they are on the fader. If it's bound, it will only do what you have programmed in. And you can also say don't use zone base point, which means it's not going to do anything because it doesn't have a base point. Until, like if I were to go into my console view and let's just throw these R2s on a fader. Pretty sure this will work. Turn them up to 50% on that console. Oh, my effect went away. Dang it. Vista's really funky that way. If you don't have, let's see if I can undo back to where. If this was programmed into a queue list, it would work better. In live, it doesn't work that well, because whenever Vista gets a new event, it like cancels out stuff, which is kind of stupid. But anyways, so that would be handy. Free use any base point would be handy in like busking environments, that kind of thing. I did that a lot with Jam at SlaughterPen. The last thing, two more things, you can syncing, auto sync, restart, no sync. What that does is if you have auto sync on, it's going to automatically determine where the cycle starts. Restart means every time you hit play on this effect, it will restart the cycle. So like if you have this effect on a button on a console for busking, and you've typed in your tempo, the band starts, boom, you hit it with the band, it's going to restart itself. And if you have no sync, then you can't change it at all. And then the last thing you can do in here is you can add parameters to an effect. So right now we just have intensity in this effect, but I can add another parameter to this. Like if I wanted to add a tilt into this. So now I have two parameters in the same effect, which is really nice because you can have these two parameters work together. You have a tilt tab and intensity tab. You can adjust things. All right. Hey. So you can adjust these together. You have same thing, size, rate, all that stuff. But you can adjust in your table over here. You can kind of adjust where they are in sync with each other. So if I do intensity times 2, I think, you can see my intensity is going up, snapping down, going up. My tilt is steadily going up. If I change this, change intensity to times 1, tilt times 2, you can see it just reverses itself. So I can change the offset of this, and you can see. So you can kind of see where the effect is going per thing. And that's something that you can just play around with and figure out kind of how you want to do that. One of the cool things you can do with this is there's an effect that everybody uses all the time where you have like some beams that are rising like randomly, and they fade on, snap off, fade on, snap off. You can do that with this. You have to have the two effects together. Vista, I've done it in Vista and I've done it in MA. Vista is a little more tricky to get the timings correct. People swear that you can do it super easily, but I haven't quite mastered that effect yet. Did it once, saved it, and then forgot how to do it. But it's a fun effect. And that's all just wave effects. So let's talk about swing effects really quick. Get all my fixtures selected again. We'll do a new effect, swing effect. And again, you can do a swing effect over any parameter, but I personally only really use swing effects for color mixing. And I'll show you why. So with swing effect, you have your parameter tab, which gives you a table of steps in the effect. So right now in this step, they're going to be at white. In this step, they're going to be at red. And you can change those values. So if I have this white row selected, I can come up here and change it to color, blue, I can select this, change it to, you know, magenta, purple, whatever. And this is an easy way to get, you know, a color trace between two different colors. With a wave effect, well, let's just show you, because it's silly. New effect, wave, color mix.
Right.
Grossness. So you can learn how to do this, just don't, because it's silly. So stick with swing effects. Do your colors, select it, do your next color, and now you have a nice little fade. And you can do the same thing, you know, sequence, you have the exact same stuff, and advanced, you have the exact same stuff. You can kind of see how the waveform is going. So you can do a random, jack up the speed, and now you have this, you know, random color mix thing. Cool thing is, you can add steps to this. So you can hit this little plus sign down here, and you get a whole new step. So you can go from this cyan to the magenta to red. And now you have 3 steps that it's going to be fading across. For every step, you have a curve. So if you want it to snap to the cyan, it'll snap to the cyan, fade, you know, to purple, fade to red, snap to cyan, fade. You could snap it to red. It's going to be interesting. And then the other thing you have in here is your beats. This is how many beats that row lasts. So you can double click here, change this to 2. Now that magenta will last 2 beats as opposed to the other ones. Or maybe it's the opposite.
I think it's treating it like a fraction. It's just
Yeah. Another one of those things that Vista thinks makes sense, but doesn't quite make sense. Anyways, another thing you can just like play around with and figure out on your own, really. Yeah, everything else is the same. So this, another thing we can talk about with swing effects. Swing effects are also nice for like predetermined positions. So if you have, I can do this over like tilt, and I can say, you know, in the first step, they're going to be at 0, and the next step, they're going to be here. And now they're going to fade between those 2 points. So like yesterday at the Dying for Dementia thing, I had some pan swing effects where I basically had them on one side of the room, set that point, other side of the room, set that point, and they fade between those 2 points. It's a quick way to do that. You can also do this with
And that's a swing?
swing effect, yeah. You can do this with presets too. So if you have 2 presets, like if let me clear this out. If I have these fixtures at, you know, this tilt, this pan, and I make a preset, just create a new preset, and call it tilt 1, hit OK. Change them to another, or I should say position, change them to that, position 2. You can, pretty sure, I don't use presets very often in Vista, but swing effect over the position, you can, one thing that I do most of the time when I do swing effects is I'll actually stop the effect. You can click here, it'll stop the effect at that step. So hit stop, it'll select it, and then you can choose your first preset. And you can see it shows this little preset icon in here saying I'm using this preset, which gets really handy here in a second. Hit stop right there, goes to the next one, and I change this to position 2. So now it's going between those 2 presets. So you hit, after you do, if you do stop, it's not going to run. You just hit run effect, and it'll start running. So now it's running between those 2 presets. The great thing about using presets is I come into the next gig, everybody did my R2s backwards. You come in here, you can update your presets. So in this case, they're going to be here, and that's actually tilt 1. You hit update, let's say update, blah, 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 hit OK. Update my next preset, they're right here. Update. And now those presets are updated, and that effect is referencing those presets and not the actual values of the, tilted pan, basically. That makes sense? So presets are really handy with positions, colors, that kind of thing, because everything that you program in Vista, if you use presets, it'll reference the preset, and then you can update them quickly later. If you're doing the same setup, the same kind of stuff per gig, it's really handy. Interestingly enough, in my switch from Vista to MA, in Vista I didn't use presets that often. Of course, in my world, you don't really need presets because everything's the same all the time, and nothing's changing, so presets don't really matter. But in MA, I tend to use presets more often because I think MA has a better preset manager. But one thing that you need to know about with presets in Vista, kind of getting off topic from Smart Effects, but really quick, you can change what is stored in the preset. So these features buttons down here, you have this little sun symbol, I guess, stands for intensity. This one is position, color, gobo, beam, and then other. You can store those into the preset itself. So if you want to create like a whole look, you can store a preset as a whole look. Also, this one right here basically inverts the selection that you have, I'm pretty sure. Or it selects or deselects everything. So you can unselect everything and just do position or whatever. So if you have like, I think this will work. No, that won't work. Never mind. Skip that. I think that's it. The only other thing that I can think about with Smart Effects would be there is a difference between position and pan tilt. So position takes pan and tilt together, which if you do a wave effect over position, you actually get this right here, which is another intricate thing. It'll give you some different like shapes. So right now it's at a circle. You can do a square, a line, which will just change kind of how it's doing things. Most of the time you use a circle, you can change the dimensions of the circle. Like one of the things that I love doing is having a circle with a really low height, like 5, but a wide pan. It kind of gives you just another dimension. Instead of doing like a pan that's just doing this, it'll add just a little bit of a up-down motion around the circle. And another really cool thing is if you set these all to like 1, and you have like a beam look going, those beams are going to be moving almost imperceptibly, but they'll just be kind of makes the rig look like it's breathing in a sense. Really, really cool effect. You can change the rate down. And it's just an interesting thing to do. Like you're looking at a look and it looks really cool, but it's just like breathing is the only way I can think about doing it, saying it. So yeah, I think that's about it for Smart Effects.
Do you ever run into an issue where you're asking an effect to kind of snap quickly and the fixture can't keep up, and so you have to adjust your rate accordingly? Like, does reality ever not match the software, or the fixture is pretty snappy?
It depends on the fixture, but yeah, like probably with the fixtures that you guys have, You may not run into that issue a lot because the Rogue series is pretty quick. But like if you had a gig where you had, you know, Mac Vipers, they're not, you know, super quick because they're gigantic. So you just have to kind of play with the timing and figure out. One of the things you can do is, like if I'm creating that rising effect, let's just see if I can do it really quick. Intensity, and then we'll add the tilt. And we want the intensity to snap like this, and snap like this. I mean, that's pretty much it, I guess, what it would be. But if the fixtures weren't snapping down fast enough and you like, it's fading on, it snaps out, and as it's like snapping down, it starts fading on like that, you can adjust, let's see, how would I do this? I think I'd have to actually do it in, with a swing effect. Yeah, let me do this. I'll take out the intensity parameter. You can actually add in 2 different types of effects inside of the same effect. So if I do a swing effect on intensity, and I go to my intensity thing, this one is going to be at 0. Let me take this out again, over here. So this one's at 0, this one's at full. So you can see this is going to be going up and then back down. But if I do snap off, that'll basically be the same thing. You can actually adjust the rate of this with, I think, this one. So if I adjust the beats down, you can see that gap gets really small. So you can, I can adjust this offset. It's really hard to see, but you can adjust the offset to where that's happening right there. And now you have that little bit of a gap between when they're actually going to start. They'll still tilt up. They'll start tilting up, but your intensity won't actually start until that point right there. Which it looks like Vista has everything off. Let me do. This is the tricky thing about that I never could figure out with Vista is this all looks right, like it should be doing that, but it's not doing that. I think what I would have to do is probably store it into a look, and then just open up that look. Give me QLists, edit. I don't know what that is. Cool.